Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Joys of Freedom. I've had this video recorded for a long time, but the thing holding me back was editing. So I decided I'm going to do my voiceover in one take and, let the video speak for itself for the most part. But here's me looking through one of my So-Go bags. I take this with me when I go to like pageants or travel for a long time for conferences because outfits, sometimes they need a little fixer-upper if things need to be taken in. But I was looking for the seam ripper. I don't remember why. I made this video a long time ago. But the point of this is to show you how to sew on a button that has one loop. Usually buttons have those 4 holes, but this is when you have one loop. So this is my pillow. And there was still that big string there. That's where it came off from. And I was debating, do I want to cut this or do I want to leave it there? Do I want to use it? And I'm just doing some investigating and seeing what the inside of the pillow feels like. So I could actually stick my finger through the hole and feel the inside pillow, and this was just a cover. But ultimately, I decided, let's get rid of that thread. So I used my seam ripper. The sharp part is on the inside. You put the thread in there and then let it go. And then, of course, we have something to stick our needles in, something that you can see. So that's why mine is bright turquoise. And then I use something called a threader, which is way easier when you need to thread the needle rather than, trial and error trying to get it in the hole. You put this through like a beader if you've ever had beads in your hair. Put it through, and then there's a larger hole that you can put the thread through, and then you can pull it out on the other end. So let's take a look at that part. Once you make sure it's through, you don't have to put it through very far, just enough so that when you pull it down, it's not going to come out of the threader. So it worked. And now my needle is not officially threaded, but the thread is in there. I like to do a double thread, so I pull it all the way. So that way I have 2 long pieces of thread of equal length and my needle's in the middle, like the half point. And I'll tie the knot there. Another way you could do it is just to tie the knot where you threaded the needle and just let the thread keep going. But either way it works. So first step, you want to anchor what it is you're trying to sew. I think that's a little easier than putting it through first. So now you can kind of gauge how close is it going to be? What else do I need to do? And with this, it was kind of like a guessing game because of the material of the pillow cover. So I wanted to make sure that it didn't just go through because there were gaps. So it needs to go through the fabric, not through any of the holes or the gaps. So that was my starting one. And then I want to see, okay, where is this going to fit? Since I didn't have it tied on the other end, that allows me the freedom of the button to move along the thread. So you want to keep it kind of loose while you're doing this because then you won't be able to see where you're sewing at. But then at the end, you can pull it. It's all going to come together. So repeat the same thing over and over. Push the needle through. Pull it out on the other side, and then go back through your button loop. So I'm going to repeat that a few times. Jeez. And since there's only one button loop, I'm kind of going the same direction. I'm not changing the angles or anything, just going through it over and over and over. So now that I have it pretty secure, I use my, I think this is called a thimble. It like protects your thumb when you're trying to push the needle through, because sometimes, the fabric is thick. So you need to push, and you don't want it to prick your finger on the other side, even with the blunt side of the needle. But yeah, so now when you pull it taut, it should be flat, or I think it's called flush with the other surface. And I was just pulling it to make sure, and then also trying to figure out how am I going to secure this, because I want to make sure when I tie it, I don't have this problem again. So I decided that maybe I should do it threading my needle through a little further away from the buttonhole, and then I would be able to tie it. So that's what I did for that. And I'm going to weave it through multiple times. Just, we want some assurance, you know. And then next step is going to be how you're closing off your thread when you're finished. Part of it, like I said, is being smart with how you're threading it through. But then, in addition to that, I decided it can't hurt. Wrap it around a little bit. Make sure I'm checking the area. This does not have to be perfect because this is not something that will be seen. Of course, if it were a different seam or a different project, there might be a little more caution with how you do things. But you're not going to see this, so just want it to be secure. That's the goal. And now I'm making sure all the pleats can lay flat. And since I wrapped it around, I'm going to push it back through. I'm going to thread it again because I'm not losing this. Because when this button came off, I kept telling myself, I'm going to sew it back on, And it took me months to get here. And I was like, let me make a video. And then it took me months to make the voiceover. So here we are. Better late than never. So now that I've cut the thread, I like to tie mine like I'm tying a shoe. So do your first knot and then do another knot. I sometimes do the bunny ears, or I forget what the other one is called for tying a shoe. But either way, this part, you do have to be able to see the thread. There's no threader used for this one. But just take your time separating them, making sure you don't have any tangles because that's going to make it difficult. So when I went to tie it, I made sure my strings were coming from opposite sides. So I wrapped them around again. Like I said, we're going for security with this one. And now I'm tying it like I tie my shoes. Pull it taut. Let's do it again. For good measure, pull it taut. And third time, let's just make sure it's real, you know. And what do? Pull it taut. Yes, very good, very good. So after we tie this, all you need to do is trim it to the point where you're not seeing that extra thread. And then you're done. Then you have your new button back on your pillow or back on your shirt, back on wherever you use this video to do. But this is how you sew a button on. Ta-da! Very well, very well, very well. And of course, I had to do the other side. So that string was connected to both of the buttons on this pillow. But just repeat the process and you'll be good to go. My super secure, ultra sewn button. All right. Thanks for watching the video. Bye.